Happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here on the wrong lead. No, you are not watching You've Got to Be Shot-Tinning Me. It's Drinking Champagne, for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Sorry about that. But Drinking Champagne, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Andrew Champagne, fresh off of some travel in lovely New York. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I am coming to you plausibly live from the closet of a guest room at my sister's place because there are two beautiful young nieces that I have that are running around. They are incredibly energetic and they are going to crash very hard in about an hour or so, I think. But for now, this is as quiet a place as I can come to you from. Happy to be here the week before Christmas, of course. Thank you very much for spending some time with us here, wherever you are. If you like what we do and you're watching us on YouTube, go on down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us wherever you get your podcast, give us a 5-star review. All of that stuff really helps us out. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us to do shows like this one.
Yeah, and obviously we're recording this the week before Christmas, so Merry Christmas to all who celebrate. Happy holidays to everybody, and if you don't celebrate, I mean, hey, happy winter, whatever we want to call it. Just
Happy
enjoy
Festivus, whatever.
Yeah, and you know what? If you don't celebrate, enjoy hopefully a couple of days off for no reason. So, but Andrew, we got some catching up to do. I just got back from a trip to Vegas last week, so I got some stories from there. I know, I definitely want to give you some time to reflect on some news that passed. Sometime I think last week. So we'll reflect on that a little bit. But Andrew, I know people love to hear our travel stories. We've made a joke or a meme or just maybe just a thing between you and I where we send each other photos when we get the big seat, or not the big seat but the good seat with the legroom in front.
We call it the Andrew seat in this show.
Now, for those of you who have not met us in person, Andrew, I believe you are 6'5".
Yep, that's correct.
I am like 6'2 3/4. I just round up to 6'3". Sorry, guys. I know I'm probably, if I had a dating profile, I'd probably get called out for rounding up that extra quarter inch. But
it's okay. I'm technically 6'4.5", and I've been rounding up since college.
So it's not just the shorties that round up.
No, everybody rounds
Shout
up.
out to all our short kings out there.
And fun fact, quick story. When I was working at Siena College, we were ordered that any person on the women's basketball roster who was 5'10.5" or taller be listed at 6 feet. Because European scouting databases were not scouting anyone 5'11" and below. That's a true story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Andrew, first flight. We'll talk about the flights here. First flight out. I got the first flight out on Tuesday, out to Vegas, out of O'Hare Airport via Southwest. Now, Southwest is not their hub in Chicago is Midway Airport. About 3 or 4 years ago, they decided, hey, we want to fly out of O'Hare as well. So we're gonna expand service to fly out of O'Hare, and basically they just ran their big busy lines, like their big busy flights, New York, I think Houston maybe, or Dallas, Vegas, a couple of big ones, and then obviously all the connections, right? The Southwest, you get tons of connections. Now, obviously living in Chicago, I don't do connections because I can basically fly everywhere direct.
How nice for you.
It is very nice. And you know what's funny? It's something I think I took for granted when I was talking with Caleb, and when he was living in New Orleans, and he was telling me how he had to take connections everywhere. I'm like, you're flying out of a major city. What do you mean you got to take connections? And then I started realizing how good I have it here. And then one thing I never realized until I flew out to San Diego, that San Diego's only got one runway. So I'm just like, even Midway's got multiples, so I'm just like, what? Like our small airport, has got that. So, coming to terms with that and just how privileged I'm living here, it took some getting used to. But I digress. The expanded service coming out of O'Hare. Now, it's not as convenient as Midway, right? At Midway, it's super easy. It's probably the the main airline that flies out of Midway. But in O'Hare, they put it in Terminal 5, which is the international terminal. Now, for those of you who've flown into really, really big airports that have these big international terminals, well, the gates are humongous because you're getting these huge planes from Dubai and Emirates and all those other like just I forget what they call them, like the skyline jetliners, like those huge 777, 787, like the jumbo jets, just humongous planes that carry all those people. And so the gates are very, very spread out. It's about a 15-minute walk from getting through security to get to the southwest gates. And mind you, I think there's 4 terminals technically at O'Hare. It's Terminal 1, 2, 3, and then there's 5.
There's no Terminal 4?
I don't think there is.
It feels like they missed the number there. I know
they probably left room for expansion and they just never did. But either way, it's a long walk. It's bigger. It's it's a pain. And but I'm one of those overly cautious people. I get to the airport 2 hours early, even taking the first flight out. So this is a 6:15 flight in the morning, local time. So I'm at the airport. I'm at the parking garage by the airport by like 4:15. I'm at the airport by 4:30, walking in. I get through security really easy. Obviously, there's not a lot of people flying out that early. Super, super simple. Flight, I get the Andrew seat. And one thing I've noticed about this expanded service in Southwest is there's been less and less flights the last couple months or last year. I think they're just not getting the amount of business that they thought they would out of O'Hare. So what used to be about 3 or 4 flights direct from Chicago to Vegas is basically down to 2. And every time I've ever flown out of that airport, out of O'Hare via Southwest, my flight has never been full, and that was the case this time. I had an entire row to myself. The row in front of me was empty. I had the Andrew seat. We were living great, right? Great flight. I sat there. I watched some Netflix, and then I took about an hour and a half nap. And I landed about 8 o'clock local time, 8 in the morning. So I had the full day, and we'll talk about that disaster of a day when we talk about gambling and the actual trip. But Andrew, I think I texted you as soon as I landed in Chicago on the way back. Andrew, I have a story for the podcast.
I've been looking forward to this one for days.
Andrew, this I felt like you, because this seems like something that could only happen to you. So before we're getting onto the plane, they basically make an announcement. Hey, this plane seats 177 people, right? There are only, I want to say, 130 or 140 ticketed people, right? Meaning, basically, if you want, the middle seat's going to be open in every row. So I'm boarding an A40 or something like that. A1 through 15 is basically empty. So I'm basically like the 25th or 30th person to board onto the plane. I get up there, Andrew seat available. And the gentleman who was so Andrew seat's available. I sit in it, get all my stuff ready. And I'm just kind of chilling. Plane's filling in. No one's sitting next to me. And the flight attendant, so a nice gentleman, him and I were talking, and he was in the other Andrew seat aisle. Well, eventually 2 people wanted to sit there, so he just kind of hid in my aisle or my row as people kind of walk past and stuff. And he kind of just like mentioned something. He's like, "You're welcome." Like he was going to stand there so that way no one would basically sit there. And literally complete plane is full. Like everyone's boarded. Everyone's got their stuff done. Everyone sat down. And he kind of says something. He's like, "Oh, he's like, you're welcome for having me stand here." I was like, I appreciate you. And so he gets out of the row and he jokingly says, "By the way, there's 2 free seats up here." Thinking everyone's already seated, right? No one's going to move. Everyone's all comfortable. Well, lo and behold, 2 guys
No.
he was just like, he just had a shocked look on his face. He could not believe it because everyone had sat down. People, like, it was so he, like, I mean, he was like, there's no way anyone's gonna move. Or he thought, worst case, maybe someone in a middle seat gets up and like sits in the aisle, and I still have an open middle seat, right? Like nothing. But Andrew, when this kind of stuff happens, right? I mean, clearly I got, I'm a bigger guy, right? I was 6'3". I got broad shoulders, right? I've lost about 50 pounds. I'm still a little bit on the heavier side. I'm working on it, but I'm a bigger guy. So of course, right? It's just two real skinny guys or a guy and a skinny girl are gonna come. No, of course not, right? It's two younger guys, and there's another guy who's basically built like me, right? Wide shoulders, right? Not like spilling out of the seat or anything like that. Like there's nothing you can do if you're wide shouldered in these narrow seats, right? Your shoulders are there. And so we were basically shoulder to shoulder the entire flight. And the guy, and I'm like, I'm in the window, so I'm just leaned up against the window the entire flight. And it's a 11 a.m. flight, and I'm just hungover to bejesus, right? Like I'm okay. Like I'm not gonna throw up or anything like that, but like the last thing I want to do is drink alcohol. Right? I'm good. And so the flight attendant, well, first of all, I see him go up to the front, and he's getting ready to do his the announcement and the other thing, and you see him just look at this other flight attendant, and basically like I could read his lips, and he's like, "You will not believe what just happened," and he's like, he tells the story, and he's just like I'm just like, yeah, like this is Andrew kind of stuff. And like I said, the guys next to me, they were nice. Like they're, it wasn't like some kind of horror, like, oh my God, like, this, I can't believe I had to sit next to this guy. But just like the difference when you have that open seat versus not having it, especially with being someone with wide shoulders, like, it's a nightmare. But the flight attendant comes up to me, and he's like, what do you want to drink? Anything you want. And of course, right, I'm just like not wanting alcohol. I'm like, I just want water. He's like, no. It's free. I will get you whatever you want. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but I can't. I'm sorry.
In the
And
meantime, you're probably just thinking, can't you get me about the greasiest thing you could possibly serve me to
yeah,
soup everything up?
I was just like, I could not believe that happened, because he was just like, he in no way, shape, or form thought that anybody was going to actually get up and come up to those seats. But
My
um
goodness.
uh but yeah, it was just, I just thought it was just such a hilarious, like, little, like, thing. And then of course, I'm watching, you know I usually like download stuff, to put on my iPad to watch and things like that. And I always feel weird, like, so like I've been wanting to finish Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones does not feel like something I should watch on a plane. All right. You never know when boobs are going to come out, right? And you don't know who you're going to be sitting next to and everything like that. Like, all right.
Oh, the Red Wedding sounds fun. What's that?
Yeah. So it's like, that I'm not going to do, I've like watched like Ted Lasso. I'll watch like Drive to Survive, like other stuff that I watch. I'll put that on. And so I had a cartoon on. It's a cartoon called Arcane, right? Which is League of Legends. And I did not realize that there was like basically a nearly like naked like sex scene. And of course, I like, at some point I looked over to the guys next to me, and I noticed that they, like, their wristbands, had wristbands on that had like Bible verses and stuff. So I'm like, all right, like, but I'm like, I'm watching it. There's some violence and stuff, but like, it's not going to be. And then all of a sudden, it's just two women making out and like doing all. And I'm just like, all right, closing that iPad. We ain't watching that on the rest of this flight. Looks like I'm watching something else. So I was just like, I don't know, Andrew. It was just like, it was like, luckily we were like 20 minutes from landing, so I'm like, all right, I will watch the rest of this at home. That was unexpected, but other than that, I mean, like I said, the guy, and when I'm getting off the plane, he's like, "I am so sorry." I'm like, "You are fine. Don't even worry about it. Like, it's all good." And but he did, like, he gave me extra snacks and stuff on the flight, so it was nice. But um, yeah, I just thought it was hilarious. I couldn't believe that happened.
When we post this on social media platforms, we need to tag Southwest Airlines. You understand? We need to do that, right?
I mean, we could,
Cheap engagement. Come on.
yeah.
I'm the king of cheap engagement. If there's
I
nothing else we know, it's that. But yeah, that's a definite Andrew story, and it's just one of those things that happens over the course of travel where there's nothing you can do because the chaos isn't happening to you; it's happening around you,
Yep.
and the Curb Your Enthusiasm music keeps going in your head, and all you need is Ed DeRosa going no, 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 and walking out of the shot. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an Andrew story right there.
Yeah. But I'll talk a little bit about the rest of the trip. So my wife went to New York. She went to New York for a couple of days to do Christmas stuff. So she
Not
wanted
New York, actual New York.
actual New York City, right?
Yes,
Like the Pace, the
right.
Pace commercial. And yeah, so she went to New York to see Christmas stuff with her girlfriend. And when she was planning this, I was like, well, maybe I should go to Vegas. And so I reached out to my buddy Gary because he had wanted to take a trip to Vegas. So we booked. We both stayed at Luxor. I still contend that Luxor is probably the best of the lower tier properties. So um, if I had to rank the top three lower tier properties, I'd probably say Luxor, um, probably Horseshoe and Excalibur, probably somewhere in that order.
You'd put
Um,
Excalibur on the list.
I would put Excalibur over. I would put Excalibur over Flamingo. I would put Excalibur over the Link. I would put Excalibur over Harrah's. And then those are basically the ones I would consider low tier. A Circus we ain't gonna even talk about. Sahara's way too far north. Westgate, no one cares. But yeah, because I think like New York, Park MGM are more like that mid tier.
What would
Um,
you consider Treasure Island?
Treasure Island's probably on the low end, but I've never stayed there.
So, Treasure Island, I would absolutely put on the list, if only for the fact that they're the only on strip casino that offers 3 to 2 blackjack at reasonable limits. And they know it. I
Yeah,
talked to a couple of pit bosses when I was there last month. I said, whatever you do not lose 3 to 2 blackjack. Do not mess with this. It's the best place to play blackjack in the city. And they
yep,
agreed. I would put Treasure Island over Excalibur on that. I've stayed at Luxor before. Luxor's not bad. The only problem is it's not close to anything except for Mandalay Bay and Excalibur. If you want to be walking around, you probably want to stay somewhere closer to the middle of the strip because you'll be able to hit more properties that way. But for what Luxor is, it's fine.
yeah. And if you guys don't know or can't tell, I'm very entrenched in the MGM ecosystem. I have stayed at most of the Caesars properties as well, but I've basically just the way the rewards program works and everything, I've shifted basically totally to MGM. I honestly, what really set me 100% to MGM is for my wife's birthday. We stayed at Planet Hollywood, and I had heard nothing but great things about Planet Hollywood. How Planet Hollywood is one of the better properties in the Caesars portfolio. And I love the casino at Planet Hollywood. I love the food options there. Right, there's cheap food. Earl's sandwich. Every time I go to Vegas, I have to eat an Earl's sandwich. Um, and obviously the mall is right there, which is kind of fun to walk through. And so I love Planet Hollywood. I stayed there once. We got, I believe, not the cheapest room, but like maybe one or two levels above. Absolutely unimpressed. It
Ooh.
was just not great. The service there was awful. And yeah, like it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And I'm like, this is supposed to be one of the better offerings. I had stayed at Caesars before, and I wasn't impressed by Caesars either. And I'm like, if these are like two of your best properties, and I didn't enjoy it, and I would rather stay at Luxor than stay at either of these two properties. I mean, I like, what am I gonna do? I actually, for all of its faults, I really like Horseshoe, which was that, used to be Bally's. I think, when NHC is there, I talked to a couple of people, horse players, and they just complained about the room and complained about other stuff.
Horse players were complaining. What
And
a
honestly,
shock.
I've always liked the casino floor leaves a little bit to be desired, but obviously it's low limits. It's some of the biggest basic rooms on the strip, and I've always had I've had a good experience there. Honestly, that might be my favorite Caesars property. My favorite place to gamble. I love gambling at Cromwell, but I've never stayed there, and
I
I don't really have a
never
desire
do
to.
well at Cromwell. I've played blackjack there a bunch, and I've always gotten my clock cleaned. I miss when that place was Bill's. Bill's Gambling Hall was a fantastic low limit place, man. My first Vegas trip, I went there because I needed to kill time. I had a buzzsaw blackjack dealer somewhere, and I stumbled in, and they were doing a karaoke night when
Hmm.
Vegas casinos would have those, and a bachelorette party was there. Vegas bachelorette parties are like case studies. Some PhD needs to do a whole bunch of those because of some of the things that and the behaviors that get exhibited there.
Hmm.
But they decided to go up and sing Come On Eileen because I believe the bride's name was Eileen. Here's the problem. The first instance of Come On Eileen in the song doesn't come until over a minute into the song. And they did not know the rest of the song.
Yeah.
It was hysterical. That's one of the few things I remember from the first Vegas trip that I took back in 2010, I believe it was. I busted out of a poker tournament somewhere and wound up at Bill's. You mentioned Horseshoe, and I mentioned poker. Horseshoe has one of the better poker rooms in town now because a lot of places have closed their poker rooms because they're not seen as moneymakers by casinos anymore. If you want to play cards, Horseshoe's a very good place to do that.
Yeah, I just saw because I know Excalibur closed theirs, but I saw Mandalay, I think, reopen theirs.
Mandalay's is very good, and they run a very good nightly tournament, especially the Saturday one. The Saturday one's a good time.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, so I had like a slightly upgraded room at Luxor. My buddy had a basic one. You could tell that mine was a little bit nicer, but it's a room, right? I like I said, I've never had problems there. Obviously, your mileage may vary. People have all kinds of experiences. I know people who absolutely love Caesar's Palace, and I just have never been somebody who liked it, and I mean, we paid for an upgraded room and got not just like the basic room, like got 3 or 4 levels above a basic room, and we're just like, this is not for us. But I land at 8. I'm basically at the casino by 8:15, and my buddy's not landing till about 8 p.m. So I've had really good luck with getting my room early. This is not the case this time. No problem. I check my bag with the bell desk, check my backpack. I got a wad of cash in my pocket, right? And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go gambling. And I think I mentioned, right? I've never played live craps before. Well, Andrew, I'll tell you, I think the tides may be changing because I saw something I have not seen in a very long time,
What's
and
that?
that's a $10 craps table.
Well,
A
to be
10
fair, this was also first thing in the morning, right?
This was first thing in the morning, but I saw it the entire week, basically up until anywhere, depending on the day, noon or like 4 or 5 p.m.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And mind you, the rodeo was also in town. So this was not just like, oh, it's December, right? And of course nobody's in town. And I did a couple of searches around. I perused Reddit, and it seemed like other people are kind of seeing the same thing. They see some locals places that normally only used to have 10 or 15. Some of them start spreading $5 craps now. So it seems like maybe we're kind of getting our head back a little bit. Now, obviously, the stuff you're talking about, 3-2 blackjack, I mean, that's probably not coming back in the low limits. It's probably still going to be on the strip, reserved for 25 plus tables.
And Treasure Island, go to
And
Treasure,
Treasure
Island.
Island. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we were able to find $10 craps most of the day, and $10 3-card poker. That was nice, and even like $15 3-card poker is not bad. So we were able to find our level and play, and even at night, craps didn't go past 15 at Luxor, which was nice because I feel like there for a while there, if it's a Friday night or a Thursday night, Saturday night, you're playing $25 no matter where you go. So, I think some semblance of sanity may be returning in that case. But and it wasn't just crapless either. It was also regular craps. Now, of course, my friend Gary, I mean, God bless him, right? But the man loves crapless craps. And, the house edge is obviously bigger on crapless craps, but, he wants to play it. We played that a lot. But anyways, I land. I'm like, all right, I walk past a $10 craps table. I see two guys at it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play. So I buy in, I think, for $300. And it took me about 30 seconds to realize the guy next to me was quite possibly one of the drunkest people I've ever seen in my entire life. Mind you, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's very easy to tell that he is still up from the night before. And he eventually spilled, basically, was talking to us about everything that was going on, and, what have you. And
so basically, after about a half hour, you're like exchanging Christmas cards now.
Dude, after a half hour, the guy was still rolling. Now, here's the thing, right? If I tell you this guy was rolling for 20 minutes or so, like you're like, oh, this is great, like you made a lot of money, and I'm like, no, it might have legitimately been 4 to 6 minutes between rolls.
Oh,
because he would grab the dice and he would start talking.
Oh God!
And he would pick it up and fake throw and start talking again and telling another story and telling a joke and everything. And he must have been tipping really well because like everyone was letting him get away with it. And now, mind you, my room's not ready. So I'm just trying to kill time at this point. Right. So I'm like, cool, take all the time you want. Like I will sit here and listen to you do all this because I'm just trying not to bleed out all my money before I get to my room. Right. And so for the first half hour, 45 minutes, I was like, okay, this guy's really drunk. But man, the longer that day went, man, the more I was like, man, this guy's like, someone's got to get rid of this guy. And then his buddy showed up, who had basically was playing with him until late into the night, went back to his room, slept, came back sober. So the guy stayed. So we probably sat there. I was probably there for about 3 hours. I think I left up about $150, and I made a very large mistake, Andrew. One of the big superstitions with craps is that a virgin shooter, so a shooter that's never thrown dice before, is very lucky. Now, I've also been told that a male virgin shooter is very unlucky. So I was like, this is my first time playing. I'm gonna take it nice and easy. I'm gonna bet the pass line with some odds. I'm gonna play the 6 and 8. Andrew, I must have rolled for about 25 minutes the first time I rolled. Probably hit every single number except for like the 6 and 8. And like it was just I made the guy next to me so much money that he started tipping me.
Hey!
So he tossed me like a $25 chip or something, right?
Nice.
And then, like I'm sitting there, and I probably ended up the roll like $60-$70, right? Not a whole ton, but but it was fun, right? I got to learn how the table kind of works and stuff. Because like I've played bubble craps, electronic craps a ton, and super easy, right? You just hit the buttons, and like I understand the rules. But the crew at Luxor was very good. We had a dealer. Her name was Jenny, who was especially good because once she started realizing how I was betting, she would remind me, "Hey, you didn't take odds. Make sure you put your odds down." Or she'd be like, "Hey, like 6 and 8." Like, she would remind me like what I was playing and kind of keep that up. But what I really, really appreciated about her is one of the guys you could tell was new, and he made a couple of mistakes, right? Not like crazy mistakes or something, but like he just forgot to pay somebody out or something like that. And she would catch it, and she'd be like, "Hey, make sure you pay him." But caught him very professionally, didn't scold him, didn't like do anything, be like, "Hey, do this." It was very professional. And I've seen how other players get sometimes. I've seen how, maybe pits and other dealers sometimes, like especially with new people, they're not always super patient, but she was very, very patient. And even one of the pits, or one of the guys, no, I think it was a guy working box. He was like telling the guy, because you could tell that he kind of was like, he's like, "Hey, you're doing great. Like, it's okay. Like, you're doing fine. This kind of stuff happens. That's why you have a crew of people, not just one person. It's a tough game to deal." And so just seeing that interaction, it just I really appreciate it, right? Because like not only can you tell that they're looking out for you, but they're also like looking out for each other, and they're really trying to work as a team. And so when I got the survey to fill out, I made sure to call her out, because I was just like, it was just nice to see, right? Nobody was like yelling at a new person. Nobody, like, very professional, just and was catching stuff, right? So like as a player, you appreciate it because you're getting paid out, right?
Yep. And
So
as a human being, you appreciate other people showing human decency. How often does that happen? Not often enough. Josh, you've got your soundboard. Can we give a round of applause for those staffers? There we go. I felt like that was called for.
yeah, and so yeah, and like you could kind of tell too, because um I've heard, I've just heard other stories of people, like, how that stuff happens. So like, yeah, you definitely appreciate it. And like it's tough because when uh, a different day I was playing, someone paid something out, and I don't remember if it was Jenny, if it was some another dealer, but they're like, "No, it's a different amount, it's $1 more or something." He's like, "No, are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, I'm thinking of Flamingo." So like these guys working it from different casinos, now they have different payouts that they got to remember, because Flamingo might pay something $1 less or something, or might take the vig up front or something. So there's lots of other, weird nuances and stuff that it's a tough game to deal. And like I felt like, I was playing very simple. I was just playing 6 and 8. I would sometimes, maybe if the roll went long enough, I'd have all the numbers covered. I'd press and that kind of stuff. Um, but you know, I watched the way other guys play, and they're just calling bets and they're just throwing chips onto the table, and which might be the way that, like, they're playing, or how they're supposed to play and stuff. And they're calling all the hard ways and just throwing the chips and everything. And I'm like, I don't know. I like that. I feel like that amount of like chaos and stuff. Like I can see why it's such a hard game to deal. But, um, but yeah, Luxor was great. We had I basically had no good gambling stories. I got absolutely murdered. I got killed. It was an absolute bloodbath, and I probably before like my room wasn't ready till 3, and basically by the time 3 o'clock rolled around, um, I was basically like, all right, well, I'm at about the amount of money I was willing to play today, like, and Gary's not even here, so I went up to my room, I took a nap, showered, kind of just relaxed for a bit, and around like 7:30 or so, 7:30 or 8, I head down and I go to the video poker bar. And I basically just play video poker for hour before Gary gets there. Gary gets there, we probably play for another hour. Service at the video poker bar was very, very good. And we end up playing some crapless craps. I end up making about $300 on crapless craps. Go to 3 card poker. I end up losing like $300 at 3 card poker. And I uh, I had to ask Gary, I'm like, what time did we go up to the room? And he said 3:30 in the morning. So we had a good first day, and I felt pretty rough the next day. And kind of the theme of the trip was we were kind of off each other's schedules. So the mornings were kind of weird because I would sleep a full like 8 hours, wake up at like a normal human being time, and realize Gary slept for like 3 or 4 hours, couldn't sleep anymore, went downstairs, gambled a little bit, and then by the time I was waking up, he was ready to go back to the room and take another nap. And so the mornings were kind of a little disjointed, but we'd get together, we'd go out for dinner, and then we'd kind of go find places to play. We went to Bavette's, always good. We went to Din Tai Fung, always good. And then I think on Friday we just kind of found some random place to eat. Oh, Friday we went to Circa. Um, and I'll tell you what, man, I've never lost $300 faster on a 3 card poker than I did at Circa. It was just absolute killer. It was like pair over pair. It was anytime I got a hand, the dealer had a better hand. It was nuts. I had an absolute cooler behind me. But the one positive story with betting I can mention is Gary on one of those mornings when I was still asleep. Um, I think I wake up around like 8:30, and he sends me a text. He's like, you're not gonna believe this." And I'm like, "What?" He got a 5 card royal flush on 3 card poker. So 2 of his cards with the 3 cards that the dealer had. Um, it pays 1,000 to 1.
Nice.
So he had $5 on it. So he got $5,000 for that.
Hello.
And so dinner at the steakhouse was on him after that. But Gary kind of had a bit of a horseshoe up his ass the entire time. We would sit down and play 3 card poker, and we'd both be getting killed, and then all of a sudden we leave the table, and somehow he's up 200 and I lost 200, and I'm like, what the heck? I told him I might as well have just Venmoed him the money I was going to gamble, just cut the middleman out. But he had a really good trip gambling wise. We're planning on going back in March at some point. We were talking March Madness, but Gary and I have a room booked, comped March Madness already. However, Mark, Caleb, my friend Mike, and possibly another one of our buddies, Andrew, might want to come. And they all looked that week, and they're looking at $150 to $250 a night.
Plus resort fees and taxes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's an absolute racket unless you stay off the strip. March is not a guarantee for me. I kind of got to save vacation time for other things. But if we wind up going, we're almost certainly staying off strip. We're looking at places like Orleans and Palace Station. It's on strip, they get a whole bunch of money from you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. Like Gary and I, we're pretty cool with changing stuff. So, what's kind of funny is we might end up in Vegas NHC weekend again because that happens. I think it's the week before March Madness, and I had told Caleb, I was like, might be cool is to go that weekend, and especially like I have a room comped. If he's got a room comped, and instead of paying, to stay somewhere, maybe we just buy tickets to one of the conference championship games because they usually have. I think they have like 3 or 4 of them in Vegas that weekend. So
they do. Yes.
So maybe I was like, hey, we'll go watch a game somewhere. But we'll figure that out and see how that kind of goes. But it was a good trip. I had a blast. It was nice to play live craps for the first time. It was nice to see normal-ish limits on the table games. I think they combated a little bit by only opening half the craps table for like the first couple hours, but basically, if you wanted to play, you could always play. I think there was maybe one time I walked past the craps table, and it was full and I couldn't get on. But um, but other than that, I thought we had a great time at Luxor. The plan is in March to stay at Park MGM, which is one of my favorite properties to stay at. Non-smoking, and it's probably got some of the best restaurants in the entire city. So that's the plan as of now. We'll see as we get closer what kind of happens. But anything else you want to touch on with Vegas, Andrew?
Um, Not really. I mean, I will say my trip to Nevada that was more recent was up to Reno. I went to bowl in a Northern California based tournament that they decided to hold in Reno at the National Bowling Center. Um, First exposure to Reno, it's a lot different than Las
Mm-hmm.
Vegas. Yes, they have a lot of casinos. Um, be careful where you walk.
Hmm.
I'll leave it there. There are a couple of nice places. There's Silver Legacy, which is a pretty cool place to play blackjack. I wound up staying at the El Dorado. Caesars wound up comping me a room. Nice place to stay. But
Is
to
that
give
the
you an,
row or whatever?
yeah, to give you an idea, um, I went played some blackjack. Was about 9:30. I took one quick walk around the area just to see what was there, and then I went back up to my room because
Hmm.
I didn't feel compelled to explore anymore at night. We'll put it that way. So I went upstairs. I watched the end of the Boise State football game where they wound up beating UNLV and covering the under for those of us that played that. Um, and then I went to sleep at 9:30 in a casino, which I don't think I've ever done before. So, yeah, just something to be mindful of. However, pro tip, cannot recommend the National Bowling Center enough for those of you that are into throwing a sphere at targets 60 feet away. It's a blast, a lot of fun. But yeah, that was the last trip to Nevada that I took, and it came less than a week after I left Vegas. Hopefully, be back in March. We'll see. For now, though, my travels take me to New York, which is where I'm coming to you from. And from there, fingers, toes, and eyes crossed, we'll see what happens in March.
Nice. Yeah. Uh, I have a friend who I used to work with who used to go to Vegas and Reno. It used to be alternating years, I think, for some kind of national bowling tournament.
Yeah, the
So
Nationals. Yeah, they
yeah,
they rotate across a bunch of sites. Yeah.
they used to have because like she used to stay at South Point all the time because I guess
Yep.
South Point's got a
South
big
Point's got a
bowling.
huge alley. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that was a place that I definitely want to check out at some point. Um, with the rodeo in town, I did not think that this was the time to try and check it out
Good
because
idea.
it's pretty busy then. But
Especially with all the F1 stuff still up.
hmm. Yeah, we honestly, I didn't really explore outside too much. Um, so you talked a little bit about going staying Central Strip because you could walk places. Honestly, the farthest north I usually go is like Cosmo. So for me, like I said, staying South Strip isn't that bad. I actually what was really cool is I went to the Chandelier Bar before Din Tai Fung, and uh, I was playing video poker at the bar, and they were comping me old fashions, and they were pretty damn good old fashions. Like, I mean, with brandy cherry and everything, right? With like it was a legitimate cocktail, right? It wasn't like something out of a gun or anything like that, or like someone who doesn't know how to make an old fashioned just muddling a cherry and doing all kinds of nonsense you're not supposed to do. It was an actual cocktail, and so it was nice. Like, when I was at Luxor, I was basically just drinking vodka Red Bulls, never again. And At some point, I ended just drinking Makers on the rocks. And after the first one, and after I tipped the guy, he was I mean, he was giving me Makers on the rocks. Like, I mean, they were some heavy pours. And then like, it was kind of funny because I was like, I wanted scotch, and like the scotch that they could comp me, I would like they're like, oh, I can't comp this, can't. And then like it was like it was a Glenmorangie 10, which was like a more expensive, because I asked him if he could comp me Johnny Walker Black, which is still like pretty cheap
Right,
as
you're
far as
not
scotch
asking for
goes.
Johnny Walker Blue.
Yeah. And he's like, no, unfortunately, I can't. And then he comes back. He's like, oh, but I can comp you Glenmorangie 10. I was like, well, I would much rather the single malt scotch, but I figured you guys like that's more expensive than the Johnny Walker I asked for. So, but yeah, so it was nice. Like I said, the service at the Play Bar, I think it's called Play Bar, which is right by the sports book for Luxor. Yeah, great. Actually, Andrew, one other thing. And I talked about this on I think the live stream I did yesterday with Horse Racing Nation with Turfway Park. I was on with them, and then I was on with Matthew DeSantis at Naira Bets doing some Turfway Park stuff yesterday. But Andrew, at one point, because Mark Midland asked me if I did any horses when I was out there, and I was like, nah, not really. Like being on Pacific time, like by the time I would think about the betting the horses, like everything was over except for Turfway. Um, and so I told him I'd bet Turfway a bit, but Andrew, why is it? Why is it there are more people trying to sign you up for a mobile sports betting app than there are working windows at the sports book?
I can answer that question because in Nevada, any account generation has to be done in person along with an initial deposit. It makes absolutely no sense. Nobody has any idea why they put that regulation in place. But if you are in the state of Nevada and you want to create a sports betting account, you can do so. However, you need to go to a sports book, you need to fill out a form, and you need to hand over the initial deposit before you can do any wagering through any of the apps. It makes absolutely no sense at all whatsoever, but that's what it is.
So this killed me because I went so last time I was in Vegas, either in July, maybe it was either July or it was last year. I don't remember which time it was, but every time I went to Mandalay Sportsbook, there was one person at the front asking, "Hey, do you have our app? Like we can sign you up for the app, right?" One person, perfectly normal. And then you walk to the sports book, and normal amounts of people working the teller, normal amounts of tellers. During slow times, maybe there's one or two. During busy times, there's like six or seven, right? I was watching, I was walking in, and I was going, and I saw Turfway Park was running, and I'm like, I'm gonna go make a bet. I'm waiting for Gary, I think, to come downstairs or something, and I have like $30 on me. I'm like, I'm gonna make a $10 exact, a $20 win bet, right? I'm like, so I'm pull up my phone, I'm looking, and then I get in line. There's one person working, and this is like 5 p.m., right? 4 p.m., 5 p.m. On a Wednesday or Thursday, and I'm looking up, and it's 5 minutes to post. Plenty of time. Well, the person who's in front of me has the person who's at the window is got like the most complicated sports issue known to man. So I look, it's 1 minute to post. So I'm like, well, crap. I might as well go to the kiosk. So I go to the damn kiosk. I place my bet, and it loses, of course, right? Um, but when I go to the kiosk, there are no fewer than 5 or 6 people standing around near the kiosks with BetMGM stuff, talking to people, trying to get them to sign up for an account. And you know, I maybe I want to tell you I was wrong, because you had mentioned at some point something about how bad the kiosks are, how bad the apps and this other stuff is, and I was like, well, they're not going to get rid of like the actual book, right? Like this is like enhancing, right? And like if you want to just use the kiosk at any point when the sports books close, it's going to be there. They can put them in various parts of the casino, so you don't have to walk all the way over to the book. Not that it's a far walk, but making it convenient for people, right, to go and do that. And um no, I was totally wrong. They're absolutely going to be replacing these things because um if you can just have one person signing people up for accounts, a bunch of kiosks, and you don't have to hire a human person, and then you send them to the cashier to cash out. Um, and great, right? They have their they can keep their TVs there. They could put a bunch of slot machines in that room, bunch of video poker terminals, maybe another bar that way they can charge way too much money for a drink, and you know, make a little bit more money. But the fact that they had like 5 or 6 people trying to sign people for accounts and only one teller, I mean, it makes no sense because how are you signing up that many people at the same time that you need all those people out there? You know what I mean? Unless like, and no joke, Andrew, probably about 7 or 8 times just walking past the sports book was I approached asking if I had an account, which in fact I already do. So the fact that you ask me every single time I walk past is pretty annoying, even if it's the same person over and over again. So
Unfortunately, this is a byproduct of the fact that not many states have voted to legalize sports betting in recent years. Sports books need to acquire app customers somehow, and they've decided this is a way to do it because there aren't many states that have voted to legalize sports betting in the last year and a half. North Carolina did earlier this year, but other than that, not a whole heck of a lot's been happening the last year and a half, 2 years. We had Kentucky back in October of 2023. We had Ohio on New Year's Day in 2023. We will have Missouri at some point in 2025. But the acquisition race has certainly died down, and they've decided that this is a way to potentially target customers that are coming to Las Vegas to gamble because they can't do it in other states. They're not trying to get you, Josh. They're trying to get the people driving in from California. And that's the big thing there. Um, I hate the fact that they're doing away with the in person sportsbook experience. I've mentioned it on this show the fact that my dad and I go twice a year, and most of the time it's to sit in a sports book for a while, play races, play sports, and have a good time. And it's hard to be in a situation like that. You've really got to do your research and look around. Shout out, by the way, to the race book at Paris, which accommodated us when we were in town over the Thanksgiving weekend. They did a very nice job by us. That was pretty cool. Highly recommend them. But it's one of those situations where that experience is becoming harder to find because casinos have deemed that it's not as lucrative for them. If they do away with sports books like that and have people bet on the go, they're betting and they're spending their money doing 3 or 4 other things. They don't have to give them drink tickets, which are immensely valuable. They don't have to worry about staffing certain places. Just another evidence of bean counters running amok.
I will say, like, I do see, like I said, with the lower limits that I saw, I thought that was a good sign. And you know, a couple of years ago, the video poker machines at the bars all had those lights on them to make sure that they weren't comping too many drinks. As far as I could tell at MGM, at least, those have basically gone. I didn't see any with the light system anymore. Um, to the point where like I said, I got a ton of drinks, and there was a point where the guy who I was definitely tipping and was helping, he went on break, and the other guy paid me absolutely no mind. And once, like, to the point was kind of funny. The guy comes back from break and just brings me a drink, not even asking me, just brought one over. Which is when I was like, okay, like clearly there's no light or anything because he literally came back from break, didn't even like look at me and just brought me a drink. So I think that part, um, maybe at least we got a little bit of a win there. But yeah, sports betting thing. I mean, I think that's going to go the way of the poker room. I mean, like I said, but the poker room seems like it's coming back a little bit. Not hugely. I don't think it's going to be in every casino again, but Venetian is got a nice room once again. Mandalay reopened their room, so some of it's coming back. So we'll see it. We'll see how that kind of ends up happening.
Fingers, toes, and eyes crossed on that.
All right, that's about what 50 minutes of Vegas, probably 40 minutes of Vegas, probably 25 minutes more than I thought we were going to talk about it. But Andrew, I definitely wanted to give you some time to talk about what's kind of going on with Golden State Racing.
Well, here we go. So Golden State Racing announced that they would not apply for dates in the winter and spring months of 2025. They will not run a Northern California calendar at that time. What that means is the only people that will be running in the state of California are in SoCal. This obviously has major ramifications for the industry at large. SoCal now has access to more horses in theory. More on that later. They will be attempting to shuttle horses from Northern California to Southern California and back while attempting to run an extra day a week at Santa Anita. They are also attempting to run $5,000 claimers at Santa Anita. Let that sink in, because 10 or 15 years ago, the Great Race Place would not have carded $5,000 claimers. That is a sign of the times that we are in right now in the state of California. Now, as far as Southern California is concerned, this was great news, because in addition to getting those horses and potentially offering more races and maybe bigger fields for some conditions, they now get the OTB revenue from Northern California, which is what they wanted. I am skeptical that this will be a good thing for horse racing long term, because the same issues that are plaguing California horse racing haven't gone away. They're not breeding as many horses in California. The ones they are breeding are running fewer and fewer starts every year, and there are more lucrative options elsewhere. Kentucky offers bigger purses. Florida offers bigger purses. New York offers bigger purses. Those issues are still there. And stomping out Golden State Racing doesn't make any of those issues any better. The thing that worries me the most is I don't know what's going to happen in the summer. Stories have said, oh, there will still be fair racing in the summer of 2025. Josh, if you're the Stronach Group and you're footing the bill for horses to come from Northern California to Southern California and run there, aren't you at some point going to say, hey, when Northern California runs, remember who's footing the bill for this? I sincerely hope that the fair circuit winds up running. I sincerely hope that we wind up with bettable race cards, not just at Pleasanton, but at Sacramento, at Santa Rosa, at Ferndale, at Fresno, all of the tracks in the CARF and fair circuits. I don't know if that's going to happen, because I don't know if there's going to be the horses around to allow that to happen. If all of those horses have been dispersed and are now running in either Southern California, Arizona, Washington, at Emerald Downs, where are all the horses going to be? I don't have the answer to that question. And if this winds up making it harder to be a racing fan, I can't support it, because the fairs are a breath of fresh air with the atmosphere that they offer on racing days. It's one of the most fun atmospheres you can possibly be a part of. It's an atmosphere you can take someone that's never been to the races before, and whether or not they place a bet, they're going to have a good time. I'm not happy about this in a lot of different ways. A lot of people wanted Golden State Racing to succeed, in large part because of the stunt the Stronach Group pulled over the summer when they threatened to sell Santa Anita if Pleasanton got full dates. Thankfully, the CHRB said, no, and don't you dare threaten to do that. They wound up giving Golden State Racing the dates. For a variety of reasons that I will not get into here, it did not work out. Handle numbers were off significantly from what Golden Gate Fields had done. We can debate whether or not that was a rational expectation. I don't think it ever was. It took them quite a long time to start doing fair type numbers as opposed to Golden Gate Fields type numbers. And apparently they needed to do Golden Gate Fields type numbers. It's sad. I hope we haven't seen the last of racing on the fair circuit. Fingers, toes, and eyes crossed that they wind up working something out to be able to put forth a quality product in the summer. Because, Josh, that's one of my favorite products to be at, to help people wager on, to handicap. It's been a blast being able to do that the last couple of years, and I hope that's not ending.
Yeah, it's it's tough. I'd mentioned a little bit yesterday about synthetic racing, and obviously with the closing of Golden Gate Fields, there's no synthetic track out um, in California anymore.
With the
But
exception of the synthetic track at Santa Anita, which
oh,
they're apparently going to start using.
oh, they are.
That's what they've been saying. I don't know if that was just trying to get Golden Gate horses to come down or not, but at one point they said, yeah, we're going to try to do that.
Well, I had mentioned, right, obviously we have Turfway that gets full fields on the synthetic. Much to the dismay of horse players everywhere, apparently, Gulfstream Park is using the synthetic way, way more than anybody thought they were going to. Belmont is installing the synthetic track. Obviously, Woodbine has got the synthetic. I
Press
mean,
style.
yeah, Presque Isle. They're it's I think it is going to come back as a third surface, and I think maybe right when it initially launched, and mind you, Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I obviously was not following horse racing when synthetic first came around, but they wanted it as a replacement for dirt, and they replaced a bunch of dirt tracks with the synthetic track, and now I feel like they're really treating it like a third surface, like an option to run when we are off the turf, or an option to run, for horses, or in the winter when there is no turf anywhere, or as an option for, hey, we just need to give the turf course a break, right? Maybe we take one turf race or a couple turf races a week and put them on synthetic. And I think the field size at Turfway, the field size that you get most of the year at Woodbine, and the fact that now you're going to have a synthetic track in New York, along with that synthetic track in Gulfstream. Basically, every single major jurisdiction, with the exception of California, but you're talking about San Diego, is going to have a pretty big synthetic track. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that ends up, kind of playing around. Because and the reason this kind of came up is, I was talking with Mark Midland of Horse Racing Nation, because for a while people were just like, hey, like, oh, bet the turf horses on synthetic, or like there wasn't really great like pedigree statistics on synthetic all the time and things like that. And I feel like, right now, especially as a horse player, um, I still think that maybe there's a bit of opportunity there. If you really start treating that synthetic as a third surface, you really start putting in the work on that, because there's gonna be synthetic racing basically year round, and it's not going to just be, hey, Arlington runs on synthetic and so does Woodbine, and that's it. um, I do think that there's going to be more opportunity with that as a horse player. Now, as a horse, as a horseman, I'm not a horseman whatsoever. I'm not a trainer. I know the head the head trainer of California absolutely despises the synthetic, and thinks it's basically a crapshoot whether or not a horse wins on the synthetic. But um, I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting development going forward. I think it's going to be an important part of horses and of horse racing and horse playing, I think, for the next couple of years. And I think it's going to be something that we definitely need to pay attention to. And yeah, like I said, I'm interested to see what ends up happening with California. If they're going to get kind of maybe get left behind, or like you said, if Santa Anita is going to start using that track.
The thing with synthetic surfaces, and I've been saying this for a while, if it's an alternative, cool. I have no issue with that. There are statistics saying it's a safer surface. We care about the safety of our athletes, both human and equine. And there's enough numbers out there that say running on a synthetic track is indeed safer for horses. It is important to note that many riders have said falling on a synthetic track sucks. I've heard enough horror stories from jockeys. That's not ideal. Now, what I'm going to say is something very similar to what I said about the closing of Pleasanton and what it could potentially do. It doesn't solve a lot of the bigger problems. Horses aren't bred in bigger numbers. They don't run nearly as much. How does going to a synthetic track primarily help those problems? I don't know if it does. We have horses that if they're campaigned 6 times a year, you will get press releases saying it was a trying campaign. 20 years ago, horses would make 6 starts in 6 months, and they'd wind up making 4 or 5 more. Times have changed. The way horses have been campaigned has changed. The way horses have been bred has changed. If we want to preserve the higher levels of this game, we're going to have a lot of difficult conversations. And difficult conversations are not anything the horse racing industry has been good at over the last 10, 15, 20 years. I sincerely hope that's something that changes, because if that change is made, we might get somewhere. And Josh, if you can find a better place to end this show, I don't know where it is.
Actually, I don't know if it's playing.
I heard it.
Oh, so obviously I don't do much editing of our podcast. We basically just do the one take. But last week I recorded, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I recorded with Matthew or Matt Carlson to do You've Got to Be Shot-Tending Me. And I played
a call, by the way, by Matt Carlson on the $88 winner in the last at Shot-Ten on the All Dirt card. That was a heck of a call by him. My top pick ran a perfect trip, no excuses second, which was pretty common on that particular card. If you wound up listening to a couple of different people, you wound up making a fair bit of money on that race. Matt, hat tip to you.
But anyways, when I played this, it apparently didn't play on the podcast, so I did not have it set up properly. But hey, it's another episode of Drank and Champagne in the books. Obviously, you can check me out at Cherry Drank, at wrong_lead on thewronglead.com. Like and subscribe, hit all the buttons. Andrew is at Andrew Champagne. You can check his stuff out at andrewchampagne.com, winnersandwhiners.com. Andrew, anything else you got coming up this week?
Whole bunch of bowl games that I'll have some opinions about. I'm selling picks on winners and whiners, picks and parlays, and stat salt at every set on the Rig Tech Network. If you're looking for some picks, give that a look. Use the promo code CHAMP20 for 20% off.
All right, guys. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and good luck.